I wanted to ask you if you don't mind sharing how you put together your garden boxes, the layers. And I think that's a question I've had come up multiple times is what goes into your garden boxes? How do you decide, ratios and things like that?
Think of it as a journey. It's like a health journey, and food is medicine. So that same concept of food is medicine for the soil. When we first started out, we started with a three-way mix because we needed a way to fill our garden beds. But it's kind of sterile if there's no worms in there, right? So when we started, what we did is different than what we do now. We needed different things. So we filled the bottom with branches and bigger log pieces and then smaller pieces. So mimicking the concept of hugel culture a little bit, and because we didn't need all that volume on the bottom. And I
What
have
did you call it? Hugel?
hugel culture or whatever. It's where you bury branches and logs and then put dirt over them and then plant into it. So we put that at the very, very bottom. And I have 2 foot tall beds. So that's a lot of space to fill. And I have 10 or 12 of these 12 by 4 garden beds. So that's a lot of dirt. And we needed a dump truck load. So branches, three-way mix. And then I got manure. You want to be really careful with so it's not containing any herbicides. If the hay had herbicides, it could show up in the composted manure.
So
So
make sure you're
test
buying organic compost.
organic or do a simple test. Plant some like pea seeds in there because they're sensitive to certain things, or plant some different kinds of seeds to see how they react to it. Like tomatoes are sensitive to some things and not to others. And so it might not impact your greens, but it might impact your tomatoes. At that point, I had to add a lot more stuff to it. And now I don't even do that. I don't add blood meal. I don't add any of that because my soil has it all. So what I'm putting in my soil is totally different. But now I add organic matter in the wintertime on the top to kind of like be a covering for the soil so the weeds don't grow, so leaves and stuff. And then my rabbit poops, maybe some magnesium, and that's pretty much it.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's exactly it is your what you start out with is not going to be what you're going to end up doing after you've worked your
Yeah.
soil for some time.
And if somebody tells you you're going to watch videos and say, "Oh, put this in your soil, put that in your soil," well, it depends. If they're doing, I've seen videos where people like, "Don't add fertilizers in this. Your soil should be just the way it is." Blah blah blah. Like, well, if you're buying sterile soil, this is not going to work for people that are starting with the three-way mix that has no worms in it. There's one gal that I follow that I love her videos, but that I remember seeing one of the advice videos and I was like, yes, but you've been gardening in your soil for a long time and you've built it up.
Yeah.
And so that advice will work for me and that will work for you and that will work for that person, but not somebody who just bought bags of soil from the groceries or from the,
Exactly.
Home Depot. A good example is for our seed starting mix that I used your recipe. I used cocoa core. I bought worm casings or castings. I don't know how to say it right. And then, the
Me neither.
vermiculite. Yeah. Anyway, I put worm casings in there and I would put them in other probably potted type of situations. What I put in my potting soil is not what I'm going to put in my garden bed because I have so many worms in there. It's kind of cool. So I have this tradition now. I let one garden bed rest every year. I pick a new garden bed and I just work through them. And that garden bed, I compost. I put all my chicken manure in there, which is really hot, and I let it literally rest and I cover it with something so nothing grows there, but everything just breaks down. I mean, and if I open it right now, it looks like a worm bin. And so I'm like, why would I add worm casings when I have a ton of stuff in there? I remember I used to have a worm bin. Do you do that anymore?
No, we are in the same boat where the garden beds are just full of worms now, where I'm like, I don't really need to baby a worm bin anymore because I had to put hay
Mhm.
around it to keep the worms from freezing. And I was like, I want things to be as natural as I possibly can. Now,
Yeah,
it was important for me to do that then when I did not have that much worms in my garden beds. But again, what you start with is not what you end up with. And we don't need to do that anymore.
exactly. And that advice, and I've learned that, and it's almost like that if you're a new gardener, like this is the one takeaway. Make sure that when you're seeking out advice, the advice is for beginners starting to build something from scratch, and it specifically addresses the
Yes.
fact that this advice is different. You will not need to do this later.